Welcome to the Dr. Pete Goldman Show. I'm super excited today to have Carlos Sapão. He is one of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the world. He's kind of modest. He's not going to say that, so I'll say it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Pete. It's my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
Cool. So let's just, there's a lot of stuff I want to chat with you about today. And I just wanted to start off, obviously, for example, like let's say someone is talking to a great hockey player. They might say like, man, how did you, tell us about even your beginning. When was the first time you held a hockey stick? Or if someone is talking to a great baseball player, hey, did someone hand you a baseball bat or did you just find one in the park and swing it? So when in your childhood did it even occur to you to start jiu-jitsu? How did that even happen? Because, for example, when you were 3 years old, you didn't do jiu-jitsu. I don't know if you even knew what it was, but then you were 4, then you were 5, then you were 6. At some point in your childhood, you made your way into a jiu-jitsu academy. How did that all go down?
So that was in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, 1987. I grew up in a family with a single mother and 4 sisters. And long story short, my mom wanted me to be active and not at the house. So this amazing, which is a coral belt nowadays, his name is Jorge Pereira. And Jorge Pereira used to teach at a club in a place called Nova Ipanema, which is a condominium place, super nice. And I was just a kid. I don't have much of a recollection of everything, but I remember being 6 years old doing shrimps with my sister next to me.
Oh, so your sister joined also?
Yeah, well, this sister, she's my dear sister, and pretty much everything I did, she has to come with me. That's how attached to her I was. And then they eased their way out, and I kept doing it. So
you said you have 4 sisters, right?
Yeah, 4 sisters.
So only I'm assuming she was the second young. You're the youngest, right?
Yes, and
she's the second young. She's the second youngest.
She's older than me, but the youngest out of all sisters.
Got it. And so she just said, okay, I'll take this jiu-jitsu class just so Carlos doesn't feel like I'm leaving him alone. But at some point when you felt comfortable, she was like, I had enough of this. I'm not going to continue.
Right. She was so sneaky about it that I don't even remember her not going anymore. She just bailed. And
got it. Okay.
I kept doing jiu-jitsu with Jorge Pereira. I was really young, so I don't really remember like exactly how everything happened. But I do remember, to answer the question better, when I was 10 years old, I won my first national championship. I was yellow belt. And I had this moment in my life. I said, wow, this is my life. I was meant to do this.
When you were, for example, when you were 10 or 8, 9, 10, you already knew some jiu-jitsu. Obviously at 10, you're winning something. So you're already knowledgeable. When you were in school and just walking around the streets, did you feel like people, I mean, even if the area might have had a high crime rate or whatever, did you feel that you personally had to kind of like use it a lot? Or basically people were not like fighting every day?
Yeah. That at that time in Rio de Janeiro, like the golden age of jiu-jitsu, I like to say, but the 80s and late 80s, beginning 90s, my generation, and we've had an immense amount of knowledge at our disposal. But we, typically in the streets in Brazil and Rio, you fight because your soccer team is one and the other guy is the other, and then your opposed team, and then you fight because you want to go to the surf and someone dropped in the wave before you. You fight for any reason in Brazil, mostly. Not anymore. I'm speaking this back in the good days. And fighting was healthy because almost everyone I fought physically, I'm friends with, and they're like my best friends in life. And so it was very healthy and common to get in a street fight and a scramble here and there. And doing jiu-jitsu gave me this energy more so to not fight because I wanted to compete.
When you were having these skirmishes on the street when you were 9, 10, 11, 12, the guys that you were fighting, they knew jiu-jitsu too, or they were just guys who did whatever they
bunch
could
of
do.
bunch of, nowadays people call bullies, right? But there were just a bunch of bullies, a bunch of guys that one doubted jujitsu, two talked smack about my sisters or my mom because I was in a house full of women, and I just literally had to fight. Most of them were bigger than me. I never fought anybody like smaller or no. I've always had a high tolerance for any kind of insult or all that stuff. But when someone bigger than me and a bully, I've never hesitated. I went 100% off, like
Got it.
on.
How,
Yeah.
how did you make your way from that first teacher that you mentioned, who you said was a coral belt, if I heard you right now? How did you make your way from that training and then winning a championship at 10 years old? How did you make your way to Carlinhos? At some point you went there. Am I correct?
Yeah. So, well, I grew up very poor. So my mom was always moving, traveling, going to places because we never had a permanent home. So in that transition between the 6 years old to 10, I just remember moving a lot, going to places, and randomly training at one gym here and there, right? But right around 10, my friends and family, like everybody, suddenly we moved to a place, and that was looking good for at least a few years in our life. Um, so we met Gordo, and if Gordo used to teach also at this place called Studio Training, and that was a place where my old teacher Ralph Gracie used to teach. There's many people that were nowadays amazing black belts and amazing jiu-jitsu fighters. They're all started there, and I was the youngster that hopped on the bicycle, and my friends were bike riding, uh, taking me to train. I was very young to attend Ralph's class. He always said, "You can look at the class, stay on the side. You're too young for this class." But I was Gordo always welcomed me to his class, and that was great.
This
Uh,
was, just so I understand, this place with Gordo, Half, right? This is not Gracie Baja yet. It's not established yet. Am I right or
well,
wrong?
Gracie Baja was established, but they all had their place to teach within the same vicinity in Baja.
Got it.
Uh,
But on the front of that school, it said Gracie Baja, or just basically they were a
no,
branch of it.
no, they were kind of branching out to their own name, obviously from Gracie Baja or Baja Gracie. That's what the name was. And I was not even yet. I've reached to. I'll tell you, my dearest teacher, Leon Teixeira, which is I love this guy. He's the best with kids and gave me so much in my life in terms of who I am today. But yeah, so because Gracie Baja was always huge, yeah, Baja Gracie was big in terms of many fighters. All these guys within the vicinity of Baja da Tijuca, they had their own academies and pockets where people that didn't want to go to the the main place or couldn't, they started training with Gordo and Hélio Soneca and all these amazing guys. So Gordo used to teach with by himself, and then he transitioned to Novo Leblon, which is another condominium where he had his most established like place. And I was there, right, training. So that's the transition. A lot of transitions in my life I don't quite remember because, again, moving and being on a go as a young age, you just go. I didn't have much of a structure in terms of place. But all my friends, suddenly this place we all started when Ralph moved from Brazil to US, they went to Novo Leblon with Gordo. I went with Novo Leblon with Gordo as well, but I was very young, and this is kind of funny. I used to skateboard a lot, and Gordo was like giving me some type of sponsorship in his gym to let me train, and he knew my difficulties as a young boy growing up, so he opened the doors for me and allowed me to train. In that story, one, I never had my own gi. This gi I had was borrowed by this kid that had a nice brand new gi and his mom gifted to him. And he says, I don't like jujitsu. I don't want to ever train. Here, I won't give it to you, but I'm gonna let you borrow it so my mom thinks I'm training. Yeah. I I never shared this with anyone. This is so cool. So I've used the gi a lot and I started training a lot at Gordo's. And that one, I never stopped. So I went train. And the kid was like, hey, Sapão, my mom needs, wondering where the gi is. I had to tell the truth that I'm not training, you have it. I need to keep the gi back. I'm like, oh man, okay, I'll give you the gi back, of course. Here's the gi. And I had no money to buy a gi. And I was kind of a loss at that moment. And there's a gi brand called Krugen's that I went there and I asked for, a gi, a free gi. I was like, can I have a free gi? I'll work for you. I'll do anything. I just need a gi. So he had a bunch of leftover gis that people, ripped apart, had patches to sew it in to cover the damage. And he gave me a bunch of like random pieces and I just had it. They were huge on me. And I kind of felt embarrassed because, it's here I am showing up at the gym and people think I had a bunch of sponsorship and I didn't. I was just, I had to do what I had to do. But at that moment, life was difficult because I had to work at a young age. I had to go to school at a young age, and I was doing jiu-jitsu and skateboarding. Back to it.
When you mentioned and going to school, so here you are, like, you're the only guy in the house. There's not a lot of money. You're trained jiu-jitsu. You have a job, but you still going to school. I mean, I'm assuming school gives homework. You have to like pass classes to get to the next grade. So how did that look? Did you try to just like come home and do your homework and then go to the academy? I mean, you have to go from grade to grade somehow.
Yeah,
How did
it was
that
really
look?
hard, to be honest. It was extremely hard. I've had difficulty learning, difficulty to make to school or finish homework. In the meantime, this is like 10 years old, right? A lot happened. And then in the meantime, transitioning between poverty, like learning how to work as a young age and bring milk and bread home. And that was difficult for me too, because I started work at a very young age, selling, beverages on the beach, filling up air on people's car tires at the gas station and getting some money just to pay for my bus ride to the gym.
Did your sisters get jobs? Your sisters were all older. Did they?
Everyone was working. Everyone was working. Everyone was trying to at least finish the month and have food on our table.
Were you always closest only to that sister that came to jiu-jitsu with you, or you were close to all the sisters?
I was close to all the sisters, but I've always had my two favorite ones.
Hopefully the other two don't see this interview. Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, yeah.
okay.
So then in that transition between all that, that's when I stopped training. And I was not training, I was skateboarding. I actually had a good thing going on skateboarding. I felt like I was good enough to pursue it and continue. But all my friends were like, Gordo's asking about you. Gordo's asking about you. Where are you? This and that. And I'm like, oh, I'm at school. I'm at school. I'm busy. I'm busy. And then one day I meet Gordo. I don't know where, in the street somewhere. And Gordo's like, Sapão, what are you doing? Where are you? Like, how come you're not showing up to train? And I was embarrassed to tell him like, hey, I just don't have a gi. Um, I just can't. I was skateboarding too, and he was like, yeah, well, I've seen you skateboarding at the parking lot at the grocery store, and you need to decide right now what you want to do in life. If you want to be a pro skater or a jiu-jitsu fighter, martial artist. And Gold gave me that moment in life where I felt the the decision making was that moment. And he was the guy, he maybe doesn't even remember that, but he was the guy who put me in the corner and said, what do you want to do? So I said, okay, I will decide. And I decided. But that in that transition, again, without the gi or anything, I was embarrassed. So this guy from Kyoto, from Master Mansour, his name is Marcos Vinicius, with Claudio França,
He opened Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu. That's him.
yeah, Claudio França and Marcos Vinicius came from Kyoto with Mansour, Master Mansour. And that's when Marcos Vinicius saw me at the bus stop, like hitchhiking, just because I wanted to go train, or I don't even remember. He's like, "What's going on? Like, where are you going?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't remember." And long story short, Marcos was like, "I've heard you're not training anymore." I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of had to stop." And he was like, "Is everything okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, everything was okay." So I explained the situation to him. He says, "Well, if Gordo or anybody doesn't get upset, you can come and train with us, and I'll give you free tuition and I'll show you the way." So for from 11, it's like 10, 11, maybe 11 and a half, 12. I don't remember much. Marcos Vinicius gave me this huge push in my life where I had a place. Master Mansour and Marcos Vinicius himself gave me my yellow belt, and that's when I was like, "Cool, I have this structure going." And all my friends from Baja Grace is like, "Sapão, what are you doing? Come back! You need to come back! Don't go. Those guys are nice, but you belong here." And I'm just like, "Man, they're so nice to me. I can't just choose right now and leave. This is, I have to be here because they gave me the opportunity. Not that Gordo didn't give me, but I was young and immature enough to understand the position I was in. So
Let me ask you one question about the poverty part. Would you say that if you think about, let's say, your six best friends at the time, were they all coming from similar circumstances where you were all like, none of us have any money? Or did some of them have money and you felt like you were the kid that didn't have money? Or you just felt like no one had any money? It was like normal. No one had any money.
they were all well off. I
Or they
was
were
the
all well.
only, yeah, I was the only poor
So
kid.
so inside the house, did your mom just kind of say to you, because you were young, did she say, look, Carlos, this is how it is. We don't have any money. We're going to do the best we can. Or did she say like, no, I have some ideas that like, maybe we're going to get some money? Or you just kind of resigned yourself to the fact, look, we don't have money. We're not going to have money. I'm just going to proceed the best I can.
That's what I did. I knew that times was hard. Things were difficult. My mom was struggling, and I just had to work. I just took that decision in my own and started to work again.
How about the parents of some of your best friends were like, hey, Carlos, just stay for dinner, like were they doing that kind of thing?
Yes, a lot of parents, they were partially my mother and my father that I never had, and they supported me tremendously. And a good half of that also criticized me for being so young and having difficulty going to school, difficulty going to this. And they were like, "How come you're not at school? You shouldn't be training and doing these
So
work
in other words,
things."
this is your friend's parents saying that.
Yeah, a lot of
which
friends'
which
parents.
which they were saying, even though it might have annoyed you at the time, they were saying it out of concern. They were saying
Yeah,
it for, yeah.
yeah, for my
Okay.
own good.
Okay.
They were just concerned that a 10 years old, 11 years old boy was working and barely going to school just to make money and also training a lot of jujitsu to be somebody.
Okay. So now
And
when just got it,
go
sorry.
ahead, sorry.
So just fast forwarding a little bit. So, you're with Mansour, then the Gordo, and they're asking about you and everything. And then fast forwarding a little bit, how did you make your way from, the Mansour gym, Gordo gym to Carlino's gym?
Yeah, so how do I went back, right? So here's the transition. Marcos Vinicius used to teach at this place in Rio. He left to US, and I was there by myself with his black belt, which is Cabelinho, a very nice guy, taught me a lot, amazing guy. And long story short, Cabelinho was teaching, but Zé Beleza, which is his name is Leon Teixeira, took over the business in this place. He was like, "No, this is now under my supervision." And Cabelinho was working under him, and I was working under Cabelinho, helping teach the kids class and helping teaching the adults. And this guy's like, "Well, this kid is here. What's wrong with him? What's going on?" And at that moment, I was, I think, 12, 13. A lot of transitioning happened. And Zé Beleza knew about, I was competing at 13 years old, adults division. I think I was orange belt. Yes, I was orange belt then. Competing adults division and back to the academy after the weekend of tournament. Put my orange belt back on. And he was like, "This is absurd. Like, give him a blue belt. This guy cannot be an orange belt anymore." So they gave me a green belt. And he's like, "No, no, no, no. Like, the green belt was great, but it didn't last, I don't think, not even 3, 6 months." And they're like, "No, give him a blue belt. I want this guy as a blue belt." So Zé Beleza gave me my blue belt. And Zé Beleza was one of the hall's students. And Carlinhos and him were best friends. And Zé Beleza used to be the vice president of the Jiu-Jitsu Federation and stuff. So Zé Beleza took me under his wings, and him and Hélio Soneca at Gavia, which is a neighborhood in Rio. And that's when my life really changed. This guy.
Question. When you were 13 and you have a blue belt, and let's say you have a quiet moment, maybe you're home, you're about to go to sleep, maybe your mind is calming down. Do you say to yourself, man, I'm gonna make a life out of this? Or that didn't even occur to you? You're just 13, you're having fun, you're not really thinking about like your career, your life, you're just enjoying jiu-jitsu? Or does it, even at 13, you're like, one day I'm gonna be an adult doing this full time?
That's a great question. So when I was 11 years old, yellow belt, I won for the second time. So let me go back to it. At 10 years old, I was white belt and I was kind of training, and I won the nationals. And then I went to yellow belt and I won again. That time I was like, this is it. So I was 11 years old when I knew that this was it. Like, I'm going to do this for a living. I'm going to be the best I can ever be. And I'm going to change my life and my family life with this.
So obviously, you eventually kind of associate with Hyan. Now, obviously, Half is older than Hyan, and Hyan's older than you. So you're 13 now. I don't know how old Hyan was. Maybe he was 16, 17. I don't know. But when did Hyan come on the scene? Because you haven't mentioned him yet. When did he kind of like come on the scene? Where did he come on the scene? When did he come on the scene?
Yeah, no. Hyan is like a special. He's in my heart, and that transition between training with Zé Beleza, Hélio Soneca, competing, all that stuff, I started to be noticed and gain notoriety in Brazil and Rio in terms of competing as a teenager against adults, and being a teenager, also competing as a teenager. So probably you're right, 18 or so, we started to connect and get close together. And I was very, very fortunate that he chose me as his friend, because Haya was a very special person, and you don't get to hang out with Haya unless Haya likes you. And him and I was like, he told me, this is from him. He told me, he said we, because his family, but he says, we've always liked you a lot because we know you struggle and you never complain. You just do it, and you're doing it. And we treat you as a man, not as a kid. To me, you're a man, you're not a kid. And that's why you have my respect and my friendship. So, and he mentioned that, him and his family made me a man. And it's true. Him and his family, both sides of the Grace family, but mostly Ryan Gracie, Ralph, Enzo, Carlinhos, of course. They made me a man. And
what happened? What question? When you're at Gracie Baja with Carlinhos we're coming to that part or whatever, we're in that part. Right. So you're training there, and you have great training partners. You're learning. Carlinhos is probably teaching some of the classes, or at least his students are. What was it about that academy at some point that made you disheartened with it or disillusioned with it? What was, you went, obviously there's a point where like, I love it over here. I love the guys. I love the team. What happened there? What was the vibe there that made you feel like this is not what I like anymore?
So from transitioning from Zé Beleza and starting going more so to Barra Gracie with Carlinhos, because Carlinhos used to teach the adults and the competition team. So Zé Beleza sent me there a lot. And so that transition itself, after I received my purple belt from Carlinhos, he's like, okay, purple belt, you deserve this and that. And I started to see things differently in terms of favoritism, or people, a little pockets of a little group here, little pockets of group there. And I've never submit to any of that. I've always liked to treat everyone equally and train in one roof where everyone is equal and we're all getting better here.
Question, is it that Carlinhos was creating those pockets, or he wasn't creating them, but he still was the owner of the school and he didn't do anything to kind of prevent that?
You know, I think it was more me. I think it was more of my own intentions of not disassociate or detach, but take a step back and go, okay, I know what's going on, and I'm just going to do me. I'm going to train, show up and train. And I just did that.
Most of the guys, when you were still with Gracie Baja, most of the guys that you had your roughest tournament matches against, correct me if I'm wrong, are either from Carlson's team or at least his affiliates. Is that correct?
Yeah, Carlson and also Nova União. They were,
which is a Carlson derivative. Okay. So Carlson and the Carlson derivatives are the ones who produce the guys that you were the strongest guys you were competing against. That's correct, right?
Yeah, you're right. A lot of guys, obviously not to say other people weren't talented and tough. Of course they were. But I've always had quarterfinals, finals with guys from Carson or Nova União.
Okay, so let's talk strategy for a second. So number one, those guys are known for a good top game and passing, strong pressure passing. You're known for your guard. So did you say to yourself, well, this guy's great at passing, but it doesn't matter because I have that much trust in my guard? Or did you say, you know what, I'm just going to turn the tables. I'm going to get on top because they're not known for their guard. I'm going to put them on their back and I'm going to pass their guard. Like, how did you look at that whole thing?
That transition took me a while. We're talking about that same time I got a purple belt. That was right about 1998, 99. And that's when I did my, in 97, I traveled to US. So 97, between 97 and 99, or 2000 even, I was transitioning between US, Brazil. I've always traveled and competed in US, in Brazil too. And that's when I've had the best time of my life because I've had such a good connection with Higa Machado, our dear friend. Learned so much from Higa, especially top game. And I used to go back to Brazil and compete in Brazil. And people are like, Sapão, what's going on? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing wrestling and I'm training under Higa. So that's when my top game became the top game. Yeah.
And then when you learned the top game or got better at it with Higgin, and then you're competing against a Carlson guy, and you're like, no, I'm going to put you on your back. We're going to see how your guard is. Were they? Did you feel like almost like, whoa, I'm on my back. I'm not passing. You're not pulling guard. What's good? Like? Did you feel even like a psychological shock that they were feeling?
So the best part was this. Because people knew me from yellow belt all the way to my transition, blue belt and all, by the time I was purple, everyone was pulling me guard. So it helped. I wanted to showcase my wrestling, but I didn't have to take anyone down. People was just pulling. That was great.
Got it. Okay. Who were some of the top let's not go to the US yet, just in Brazil. Who were some of the toughest guys you competed against? Like who were in your mind like the three best guys you competed against, maybe even regularly in that era in Brazil?
Man, there's a lot because we're all growing up, right? And now they're just achieved so many great things in their career. Tough one. There's so many.
I'm sure there's 20, but let's say there's one or two. You're like, man, that guy was good. He was freaking. Even if you won, you were like, man, that was very tough to go against this guy.
Yeah.
Or even any matches that stick out in particular. Let's forget about toughness. Just a match that sticks out in particular. I remember that match. That's a memorable match.
So one of the matches that I remember was blue belt, and that was the final for the Brazilian national team, which is composed by 7 people, 2 on the bench, 5 competing. And I was the final with Bruno Bastos or Ricardo. No, it was Ricardo Bastos from Nova União. Amazing guy. And the Bastos family, everybody knows them. They're amazing. And Saulo Ribeiro was the ref. And the man, the bench, the people rooting both sides, you can see everyone's face and all the big names there. And Ricardo Bastos and myself. And it was just, yeah, I took it and took the victory and decided the finals for Barra Gracie team at the national Brazilian team tournament championship. So it was just incredible to see the crowd and the sense of accomplishment fighting someone so good in that big sense.
When you went home from something like that, I'm sure your sisters and your mom were, supportive and happy, but were they kind of like, no, we understand what's going on in jiu-jitsu, this is great, or they kind of were just like, we don't really understand what's going on, but we know you're happy, so that's good enough? Or did they kind of have some idea what was going on?
My mom had no idea. She had no idea. My sisters couldn't care less.
Okay, got it. Okay.
And funny enough, when I was purple belt and I decided, so my mom never went and saw me compete since I was a little boy. And at 6 years old, I didn't mention that. They have those in-house tournaments, little tournament here. I was competing. I remember I was competing judo too. It's like it was all one thing. So my mom never went to any of those. And I remember being 10 years old going to compete. And I asked my mom, Mom, you want to come? Let's go see me fight. She said this. She says, No, I'm not going to go. You go do your thing. I don't want to go. So I was pretty bummed out about it. And when I competed, won, went home, no biggie, had the medal, just put it away. So I was purple belt. And I was purple belt at 17. I was very young. And uh, my mom decided to go to the tournament. And that's quarterfinals world championship purple belt in Brazil. I'm at the quarterfinals with this amazing guy. And I hear that one voice in the crowd, her voice. My leg, everything shook. I couldn't believe it. When I look at it, my mom is rooting for me in the opposite team, in the guy's bench. I couldn't believe it. So I was so out of it. There's no an excuse. The guy was better than me that day. Of course, he took me down and won the fight by 2-0, whatever points. And I just couldn't believe it that after many years, my mom was there. I heard her voice. She's right by the opposite team side, rooting for me. But people were nice. They're like pushing away, giving her space. It was the sweetest thing. And I couldn't handle that pressure, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great story. When you moved to the United States, not like you said before, competing back and forth, but when you moved, you're like, okay, now I am moving. I am living in the United States. I am moving. What was your first stop?
It was LA.
Okay. So, yeah. And what was your thoughts? What was your plan? What were you trying to do? I mean, obviously you were trying to reside in the United States instead of Brazil, but besides that, what was your goal? What was your mindset? Like, what did you go there to do?
Right. So my mindset was the same: train, teach, and become the best and compete and become a black belt. And Bob Bass from Riga Machado gave me an opportunity to teach class with him for kids. So that was great.
What belt were you then? What belt?
I was purple belt.
Okay.
Bob Bass was no, he was not brown belt then. He was black belt.
Okay. But, so I'm thinking that the average guy who came up in the US at that time, getting their belts, whatever belt they are, and you're coming from 6 years old. I mean, you were just a brutal purple belt. I'm assuming you're a purple belt and you're just tapping these American black belts, like just in the academy. Were they kind of like, what the hell is going on here? Or were they just like, oh, this guy's from Brazil? Like, how did that all go down?
So, yes, I was doing my best and taking care of business. And I've always wanted to be a black belt at 18, 19. And I was mad at myself from being 19 years old. I believe I was transitioning between 19, forgive me. So in 99, 98, I was purple belt. And then, 97, 98. So 98, I was purple belt. 99, I was brown belt. And I was mad at myself that I didn't accomplish the black belt at 19. and then I accomplished at 21 with Half. But my goal, personal goal, since I was a kid, was to be a black belt at 19.
Let's go from LA to San Francisco. You get to House Academy, you're a brown belt, right? You're a brown belt. Now, House, unlike some of the other stuff that I mentioned just now, a little before, about how like a lot of the American, even brown and black belts you're running through, Half has a tough academy. So he's got some guys who did judo, wrestling, or even if they came up from white to black with Half or whatever, white to purple. I mean, they are really good at Half's Academy, but you still come in and what did that look like? I know there was like Cameron Earl who was tough and Camarillo and whoever else was there who was Kurt or whoever else was tough. So when you came in, was your attitude kind of like, I'm just coming to fuck all these guys up? Or were you coming and you're like, okay, I was going to give you three, a multiple choice, A, B, or C, but you already nodded for A. So I'm not going to go with B and C. So how did that look? So you come, Alpha's probably like, hey, this is Sapão. He moved from Brazil. He's going to train with us now or whatever, however that looked. Right. And then these guys are wearing whatever belt they're wearing. Were they kind of like, yeah, fuck you too, come on? Or were they kind of like, oh, we're in trouble now? Or they were kind of like nice? Or how was those first few days when you're like, okay, now it's time to roll? What did that look like there?
So it was just like that. My transition when I came, I was in Brazil doing my transition between not citizenship, but documents and stuff. So I would never stayed illegally here. So that's why I went to Brazil so much and renewed my visa and all. And Half was there. And Half's like, you gotta come stay with me, this and that. And I was like, sure, let's I'm just abbreviating the whole story. The day he picked me up at the airport, he took me to his gym, and I felt like, obviously it wasn't set up, but I felt like it was a setup because all his best guys were there. And I just trained with everybody and just, represent. At that moment, I represent two things, myself and Half Gracie.
So question, so just pausing there for a second. So let's say you come in and whoever the name is, like Cameron Earl, whoever the good guy is. So you start rolling and you're whatever you're doing, tapping them, smashing them, giving them a hard time, whatever. Are they kind of just like, wait, we've been just dominating everyone? Like they're thinking like Half's Academy is one of the best, one of the toughest academies in the US. Right. Was. And they're the best students there. And now this guy's coming in. He's not even wearing a black belt. He's beating us all up. Were they kind of like, oh, cool. Okay, I'm glad you're here. Or they're like, damn, like, I'm upset. I'm going to get you next time. Or what was the vibe?
Well, they knew that Half brought a new sheriff in town. And I was in. I was in. Between Half and high-end support, I was there to take
so what about a guy? What about a guy like Cameron Earl, who was like, I actually never met him in my life, but who was maybe, kind of like dominating most people there. And then you do what you do with him. And then let's say it's later that day, everyone showers and changes. And, is he just kind of like, oh, like, I'll be friendly to you? Or was he just like, fuck you, man, you're like taking over my spot here? Or like, how did that look?
Yeah. Particularly with Cameron Earl, like amazing fighter. Him and I were head to head all the time. And, he was kind of a strange guy anyway. I never felt like we were friends, but we're teammates. But I think culturally, I didn't understand a lot what was going on around me as well, because it was a new place, new people, and I just had to get situated and acclimated. So Cameron was kind of like, yeah, I'm just going to be gentle and cordial with this guy because there's no other way. I was there to stay anyway. So he just had to, accept that I was there. And he was no longer, I don't care, like one of the top 5, 10, 1 that he had. I was just there.
Was there anyone there, you don't have to mention their name, but was there anyone there that actually just could not emotionally accept the beatings they were getting from you, and then they were like kind of rude off the mat, or they all were just like, hey, it's not this guy's fault, he's just better than us? Or
yeah, there's one guy, and I will mention name because the truth needs to be spoken.
Okay.
David Camarillo was a very, very jealous guy of me because I smashed him every day. And yeah, he knows that. He's going to have to sleep with that. And there's nothing you can do about it. So, yeah, David, you were not nice to me. And that's why I was never nice to you on the mats.
All right. Well, that solves that. So
Yeah.
next question. When you think about, I once saw this video, and I was actually there. I wasn't there. When I say there, you'll understand what I mean in a second. It was when Henzo fought BJ Penn in Hawaii. I know you were there with Henzo. I was there with BJ. Me and you didn't even know each other then. That was 2005. But I remember seeing a video of Rickson kind of like warming up Henzo. And Rickson said to Henzo, I'm sure you were in the room, but you might have been standing 10 feet away. So you might not have heard Rickson say this, but I saw the video. So what Rickson told Henzo, he said, look, the way to fight is the fight starts, you have your distance, and you're basically telling the guy, come on, do whatever you want to do, punch, kick, whatever. But ultimately, when he does that punch and kick, you're only instigating him to punch and kick you so you can clinch him, go to the ground, and then fight on the ground with jiu-jitsu and, of course, with strikes. That was Rickson's idea. Rickson's idea was there's no point in exchanging strikes with this guy because then it could be like a 50-50. You're just initiating some contact to get a clinch and go to the ground. So that's what Rickson told Henzo. Now, of course, Henzo had trained boxing and kickboxing. How good Henzo is at boxing and kickboxing, anyone can make their own opinion of that. But you can't deny the fact that Henzo was like training his boxing and kickboxing because he wanted to add that to his repertoire. So my question for you is, when you take the Rickson philosophy of you don't really have to be a striker, you just have to know how to kind of deal with strikers so you can clinch and go to the ground, or you take the Henzo philosophy, which is no, of course I want to go to the ground, but I'm going to punch and kick, and we're going to do this, and until we end up there.
Right.
How do you look at those two philosophies of fighting?
Yeah. That's a great question. I learned from both of them, and I've took at heart both of their philosophy, and I added to myself. So I do think it's important to know how to approach and bait your opponent and use your jiu-jitsu clinch and connection. But I also think because jiu-jitsu does have a basic elbow strike, with self-defense stuff, a knee or a kick. The self-defense aspect of jiu-jitsu teaches you very little of striking, and good enough to strike in a close contact self-defense situation. So I took a both. I did Muay Thai with Chris Cariaso, Bunker, Fapimai, and Nuncium at Fight and Fitness back in the days. And I've also learned a lot of wrestling, Greco-Roman, and just boxing it at King's in Oakland. And Mr. Charles, thank you for everything, sir. And just I kind of mix it both. I think if you ask me which one is it, I say you have to do both. You have to be well-rounded, and if anyone is willing to learn and absorb by experience, I think you should listen to people that are been around before and try to learn from their philosophy, their view, and make your own. That's what I did. I was lucky enough to be around these guys in the same spot, in the same room, in the same training mats, and I've had the opportunity to also make this analysis of my own and choose which direction I want to be. And I chose to learn Muay Thai, boxing, and I chose to learn wrestling, but I always stick with jiu-jitsu.
And now Kyokushin. Okay, next question.
Yes.
Next question. This is a little bit off. What we were talking. It's still the same topic, but a little bit off topic. It's I think when someone's a great fighter, they have a good eye to analyze fights, other fighters. Like, for example, this is not even the question, but like someone like you could look at Fedor in his prime. You could look at Fedor in his prime. And because you understand fighting, you can watch Fedor in his prime fight and give a lot of good analysis on why he's so good, which is not what my question is, but I'm just giving the context that a great fighter, their eye can see fights. So here's a question for you. When Walid fought Royce, and he choked him, I think, with a clock choke, right? He put him to sleep. I heard that Walid was not even, he was like the sixth best guy at Carlson's. He wasn't even like good. Like I heard that Walid in Carlson's would lose, he was not even on the top, but for some reason they chose him to compete against Royce. They could have put Mario Sperry or Bustamante or whatever, but they put Walid, who was not even like one of their better guys. So I heard. So my question is, when you look at like Royce versus Walid, and Royce, of course, is the son of Ilio Gracie, and he grew up with it. And how did that? I mean, listen, and of course, anything can happen in a fight. Anything could happen in a match. I mean, maybe if they competed 10 times, who knows what would happen. But with that said, how does a guy like Walid just like dominate and put him to sleep? That's a very famous match in jiu-jitsu. You have a good eye for this. You were there. You know both these guys. Right. What is your analysis of that day?
I feel like my own way of analyze the fight. Walid had more option and more variety of training. Period. Just more people to train with. And Walid is a hard worker guy, so he trained. And Royce, coming from US to Brazil, I don't know how many people he had at his disposal to train with him for this fight. So it felt like when he turned his back, Walid's best position is the clock choke. So it just, and I know from a fact that people did warn Royce about the clock choke, but then I don't know all the details about it. But from good sources, people did tell him, hey, be careful. This guy has a good guard pass and a good clock choke. That's all. Which is, again, I don't know. I'm sure Walid has a lot more to offer. But yeah, I just felt like I couldn't believe it. I was sitting right in front, underneath the table with Carlin. Carlin was sitting. I was underneath the table, just like watching the fight. And I just couldn't believe it that Royce Gracie lost to Walid. And then at that moment, I was like, I think Walid had more options to train, and that's why he came more prepared.
Hey, you told me a good story once, which I really enjoyed. I think it'd be kind of cool for the interview. It's kind of an entertaining story. I'm going to remind you of the story because we haven't talked about it in a long time. You told it to me a long time ago, but I remembered it. You told me, and feel free. I mean, I'm gonna recount it just in a bit, just to remind you of it. But then I'd love you to tell it in full. I think you were teaching one night, and like a father-son judo guys came in to kind of like dojo storm you. Like it was like two judo guys, father and son, and they, kind of bad attitude, and I think you beat them both up. I remember you telling me the story. It was I thought it was pretty cool. So you want to tell that story?
I was teaching, let's call end of the shift, right? I was teaching last class for Health Academy. And I just saw these two guys walking in with that nice, big, solid, heavy shaped judo gi coming in.
They wore their gi. They wore their gis right in. They walked through the door with their gis on.
They had their gis right in, like coming in with gis.
Not like they came in with a gym bag. They just came in with the gis. They're ready. Okay.
They were walking around with gis. So they showed up. And I was like, oh boy, this cannot be good. And I knew the gi was not a jiu-jitsu gi. Oh, we want to train. I said, okay, we're at the end of the class here. There's a bunch of beginners. You have to sign the waiver. That's what I was told. Everybody signs the waiver. So I was like, okay, everybody signs the waiver. So they signed the waiver, and I was just like letting people roll, basically. It was kind of like a lay back, end of the day, open mat almost. And these guys are just going at it at all beginners, like smashing people. And I'm just like, oh boy, great. I'm just going to have to like protect my people because I was in charge. So I had to protect my people. So I asked the son, it was a son, father and son. I was like, hey, you, let's train. And man, the moment I went and grabbed the guy gi, he just like twisted my finger.
Standing up, standing up.
Standing up, just like twist my finger. I'm like, hey, if you don't let go of my finger, we're gonna get more serious than this. You better watch out. So he let go. Whatever happened, I went to his back, hands on his neck. I pressured him. He'd resist. I pressured him more. He'd resist. I said, man, you deserve it. So I passed him out. It's like I choked the hell out of him, and he passed out. And his father came. My son, I said, hey, listen up, old man. You don't come any close because you'll be next. And everyone's like, whoa. And my English was very broke. And these guys were Brazilian, come to find out. They were Brazilian. So I said that in Portuguese and tried to explain that in English too, so people kind of got the situation. So the father took a step back, scared. The son woke back. And I said, let's go again. So we went again. And I passed him out twice. I said, now both of you get your stuff and get out of here. I don't want you ever here. The son, okay, the son became a student of jiu-jitsu from Ralph Gracie Berkeley a long time ago. And I used to teach at Ralph Gracie Berkeley. And the owner of that gym asked me, hey, so-and-so wants to train here, but apparently you guys had something happen in the past. He's asking if it's okay if he trains. I was already transitioning out. I was like, sure, I don't care. Like, good for him. He's training jiu-jitsu now. And now he's a very good friend of mine, great guy, black belt now in jiu-jitsu and judo. And that's, I guess, it turned out to be great because he learned the hard way that you got to show up to people's dojo respectfully and be humble, not trying to prove a point. Or
What's another maybe one you didn't tell me before? What's another good dojo storming story? That's a good one. Any other good ones?
I've had a few in LA when I was purple belt. I've had some, and that was fun because Bob Bass couldn't care less. He was just like, go at it. Let's do it. Bob Bass was a very nice guy to me. I liked him a lot, and I've had a few. But also, like, just random dudes from other school that just, didn't behave well. I guess they Brazilians and Americans, we all have different cultural like stuff. But when you come to a dojo, it's pretty basic. It's like be respectful, be clean, and be well spoken, and just have a class, have a good time. Don't be an a-hole about it. So I've had a few. Nothing I can remember that like makes me that guy, because it was, let's say, maybe 5 happened before, with this one too. But this one stuck the most because these two are Brazilians. And I'm like, how do you like being a Brazilian, show up to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy like this, man? You guys are out of here.
Let me ask you this. Speaking of the cultural differences from Brazil, United States, Japan, wherever, cultural differences, they exist, right? It seems like when it comes to jiu-jitsu academies, Brazilian jiu-jitsu academies, there historically is the potential for a lot of friction when people move academies. Like, for example, someone's training here, whatever reason they leave. I don't know why they leave. Maybe they didn't like the teacher. Maybe they didn't like the students. Maybe they moved. It's too far away. Now this academy is 5 minutes from their house. This academy is now an hour further than their house. It's nothing personal, but who knows? Who knows why people move? And sometimes they move, and the instructor here says, okay, well, you move, good luck, whatever. But sometimes if they see each other, this guy's going to attack him. So what is it about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu culture that has led to so much friction of people jumping from one academy to the other, training at different academies, whatever? Now, of course, there's exceptions. I'm not speaking for everyone. There's some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu teachers, they don't care. Say, hey, train wherever you want. But can you kind of describe that whole world of what is the issue? What is the problem? What is that all about?
Yeah, man. It's a very delicate subject, but I'm gonna do my best. I myself left Half Grace team, and obviously I had my own reasons, but I carry no animosity or hatred towards it. Just left and chose to be my own. But a lot of times when people leave, it can be the teacher's fault. I would say it's the teacher's fault. One, whatever, right? Someone got hurt and then you didn't. Every person has their reason, and and I think the teacher in a position to call yourself a teacher or a master, sensei, right? You have to be in a position of you have to be able to look everything that's happening in everyone. You cannot have this narrow vision where you think that everyone should ask you things. You know, you are in a position of service. You are at service. You should be the one in charge and asking everyone what they want, what they need, and how they're doing it. So I feel like a lot of times people lose track of their mission, which is again the position of service, and they lose track. And a lot of times they maybe feel empowered or forget that they should be the ones asking people what they would like to get better and how they're doing it. And it has to be sincere. It's not like a business corporate to ask you, you know, please come back later. No, it's like, you know, a lot of jiu-jitsu academies called brotherhood, sisterhood, family. Sure, it is, but it's also a business, and you have to maintain that quality of a small business, which is quality, control. Make sure your food, your product is always top notch. You don't rely on the huge manufacturing corporation to provide you the resources. You go local, you get local products, produce. So that's what a jiu-jitsu teacher to me should be like. And that's how I try to be with my students and my friends that and clients, people that come from other school and visit me. So I think a lot of guys culturally cannot handle the fact that uh, they're the ones at fault. And obviously there is cases where, you know, like the master Carson Grace used to call Creonte. There's people that come with bad intentions.
That was a cartoon character in Brazil, right? That's what he named it after, right?
Yeah. So it comes from, you know, comes with bad intention, suck your energy out, learn all your knowledges, go and opens a school across the street from you and tries to badmouth you and steal your students. That's like someone with a major bad character. Just, you can't change that. That's just someone. But I think if someone chooses to leave because, you know, I leave 30 miles from you now, 50 miles, you know, I get it. It's fine. But if you like move 10 miles away, like, you know, I think you can make an effort, and comes also the student part of understanding like, hey, this is your team by choice. It's not like you sign a contract and your soul belongs to the team. It's a mutual thing, right? The teacher has to give you what you're paying for, which is a class, and it provides you a clean dojo. But the student also have to be reciprocated and reciprocal about, hey, thank you, teacher, for all your effort, for teaching me. I admire your hard work, and you teach me my best, and my life has changed thanks to jujitsu. Right?
Perfect. Good. No, I got it. Well explained. Well explained. And my final question for this interview is this. When someone is competing, so, you know, they're let's say they're actually, no, I have two more. I said final, but there's one more thing I wanted to mention. This is my second to last question. When someone's competing and they, you know, they're going to step on the mat, maybe even as a black belt in a very high level tournament, and you're coaching them. You have a friend, your friend is the black belt. He's good. He's going to compete at a very high level, but he asks you to corner him. And now you're in the locker room before he goes to fight. What are the mindset things you're reminding him of? I mean, he already knows you. You're not going to teach him how to do a Kimura. I mean, he's the black belt. You're not showing him that much technical stuff unless maybe you know something about that opponent. You want to remind him of something. But in general, you're saying a few words to kind of get him in the right mindset. What is that right mindset for a competitor who's going to fight?
I tell a lot of them when I have the opportunity, the same thing I've always told myself. Training sucks. Training is hard, but I'm doing all this so the day of, I'm free. So that's what I tell them. I said, hold nothing back. Today is the day. You've trained through all this to be here today. So don't hold back today. Let
Good.
it all.
Beautiful. And my final question is this. You obviously have competed from 10 years old onward, and you have, if you look back, we didn't even do that today, but if you look back at all your accomplishments, best tournaments, best matches, best wins, you probably could spend some time and think about it or write it down and whatever. But one particular, which we've discussed before, one particular day, which was a really good day for you, was a time that you competed at black belt and you won the gold medal. And in that day, you beat Frangina, Megaton, and Paulo Guilabel. That's three, well-known guys. Like Frangina you could say he's almost like a legend in jiu-jitsu. Some would say Megaton, I guess some would say he's a legend in jiu-jitsu. Paulo Guilabel, I don't know if he's of the legend category, but he was one of Higan Machado's best fighters for a long time. So we're talking about three spectacular fighters, and in one day you beat them all. So you have any thing you want to say about that day, or memories of that day, or parts of any of the matches or the finishes, or that's a worthwhile day to be documented. So I'm documenting it on this interview. So anything you want to say about it?
It was a great day for me because I realized a week before that tournament that my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and the tournament was giving, I think, $1,000 prize money. And that was the beginning of not only my fight, but my mom's fight. And I was like, what, $1,000? What, my mom's with cancer? There's no way I'm going to lose this tournament. And that was my debut as a black belt at 21 years old in 2003. So I was like, there's no way. I don't care who's in front of me. I'm just going to do this. And it happened to be these three legendary guys that I've seen growing up competing and had the opportunity to share the mats with them. But I think I was in a different mindset, in a different zone. And
who was the hardest that day? Who was the hardest to beat?
The hardest that day
to beat of those three?
None of them.
Good. Okay. And then next question: when
I was best that day.
Okay, when the day was over and got your $1,000 and you're so happy, maybe after you get out of your gis, you get dressed. I don't know. Maybe you're in the lobby of the place. You see them. Were they kind of like, "Hey, good job, man. That's awesome," or did they kind of shy away from you because they were embarrassed or they were upset, or did you, or maybe you didn't see them after, you just didn't see them? I don't know.
I'm still very good friends with all three of them, but I felt like they were, it's like, wow, this kid is no longer a kid; he's a man, and I've just had a matchup with him. So I kind of felt that growth internally in myself. I was like, and in that day, I had a major injury in my wrist. I didn't even think about it. I didn't even notice until the next day.
Are you allowed to tape it?
I actually, if you look at the videos back in the days, I had tape on my wrist, but I was so in it, I didn't know it was so major.
So you're allowed to tape it. You're allowed.
Yeah, I was allowed.
Because believe it or not, in Kyokushin, at least when I fought, I don't know if they changed it, but in Kyokushin, you can't tape your injuries. So I remember one time in 1990, I was fighting in a huge tournament like that kind of level, but in Kyokushin, like some of the best fighters in the world, and I had a broken right big toe. My right big toe was broken, and Kyokushin, chances are you're gonna hit it somehow. And I before the fight, I had my toe taped. I taped my big toe to my second toe, and one of the Kyokushin masters who was there, he's like, "No, you take that off." I said, "My toe is broken." He's like, "I don't care." Like, you can wear in Kyokushin, you can wear a cup and a mouthpiece. They don't care if your fingers are broken, your freaking rib is broken. You can't support your body in any way. You can wear a mouthpiece and a cup, and a gi and a belt. So the good old Kyokushin days, Masoyama style. In
500
fact,
students, like,
Masoyama, when he started Kyokushin tournaments, there was no weight classes. It's just, you're 130 pounds. This guy's 200. They just want to see who's the best. There was no weight classes. And then years went by and they made the weight classes in Kyokushin.
right.
So, interesting little tidbit.
Which is, I mean, very realistic too. It's like, you can't
Yeah.
just pick who you're going to fight with.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, great interview. Thank you for today. And I think a lot of people are going to get some good enlightenment from watching this. And thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. I wish everyone well, and keep training jiu-jitsu, show up, and be respectful. Thank you, Pete. Appreciate you.